everyone. My name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland,
and welcome to the 905er. Coming off the last 3 Tuesday episodes, we were focusing on our examination of the various party platforms as they come out. We covered the NDP, the Greens, and now it is time for the Liberal Party to get our analysis or our spite. I don't know what you tell it. We'll figure out by the end what we think of it. But I guess out of a matter of utmost transparency and truthfulness to you, our faithful listener, it should be noted, I used to work for the Liberals back in the day. Roland was a riding association president back in the day. We've since canceled our memberships, canceled our donations. We are no longer with the party in any capacity, official or otherwise. We're no longer sitting at the table, this is what we're saying. So we're learning this just as much as you are, and this is our God's honest opinion on what works and what doesn't in this platform. So
absolutely.
On that note, why don't we start off with, I guess it's the 3 E's that we thought we liked about this one: education, the economy, and the environment. We thought were where they really did gangbusters on this. Let's start off with education. So if you flash back to our episode with Stephen Del Duca a few weeks ago, we interviewed him, and one of the questions I asked him was, what was the one legacy policy that he would want to change for the better in Ontario should he become premier? And his answer was education. He wanted to make our schools in this province better and improve after his potential tenure as premier. I have to say, judging from this platform, that it would be indeed his legacy if he becomes premier. So to kind of highlight it, we're talking capping all classes, and this is important, all grades. So K through 12, now possibly 13, at 20 students. That's 20. That's huge. Considering what the classes are like right now, 20 students is a big thing. And that would be requiring hiring more teachers, building more schools, or at least improving current infrastructure in the school system, for sure.
Yeah, I felt the same. I mean, that's what leaped out at me, and that I was, as I read through, I was kind of disappointed in some places, and in other places not greatly impressed, and we'll come on to that. But in terms of a kind of number that stares you in the face and kind of really means something to anybody who's been to a school, which after all is all of us, capping class sizes at 20 is a big deal. I mean, I was saying before we came on, I back in the dim and distant time, in a different country, I can remember our class sizes being in the 30 to high 30s. And as those numbers crept up under the government at the time, it seemed, even to me, even as a child, that it was obvious that was the difference between a class that was basically controllable by a teacher and a class that was often just chaotic. And so 20 is, I think that would be a fantastic. And yeah, I mean, we have to say that the NDP have suggested that they would bring this to, but it's to 24 and only for grade 8 and downwards. So yeah, on that policy alone, that single policy, the OLP have kind of won that.
Well, absolutely. As a parent of 2 children in this system, thinking of my kids having only 19 other classmates in their classroom, it would be transformative. I mean, that'd be a lot more tension, a lot more ease on teachers to be able to focus on educating and going into details and helping in those troublesome areas that always arise. Students just don't get it. They do not get a topic or a subject, and the teacher is able to focus more attention to help them through it, as we expect teachers to do. So I think that's fantastic. The other big thing, there's a lot of other things that are, I think, work really well in the education platform. And it's bringing back grade 13. So if listeners are of a certain age, you might remember OAC. I was one of those people. Grade 13. That's a good. It can be a good thing. Maybe not. I know a lot of students already they call it the victory lap. They stick around for one more year anyways in some cases, but updating the curriculum to add more Indigenous, French, and diverse and modern learning. I like that as well. I mean, we should always be updating the curriculum to more modern standards and, learning what happened yesterday, so to speak. But what I think is the biggest plus of this platform on education is the investment that they want to make into clearing out the backlog and repairs and new builds that need to happen for the actual infrastructure of our schools. There are a lot of schools, as we learned throughout the pandemic, a lot of schools were just badly in need of HVAC repairs, as an example. The Liberals are promising to try and clear that backlog. And the way that they say they're going to pay for that is they're saying that the money that the current Ford government is earmarked for Highway 413, that we believe it's $6 billion is the estimated cost of that, if I'm not mistaken. They're going to take that money, instead of building a highway with it, they're going to put it into the schools, literally into schools, which I like that kind of thinking. That's where that $6 billion should be spent. So I like what I'm hearing. 10 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and I guess to an extent, kind of saying we'll take money out of this pot and put it into this pot is obviously somewhat artificial. You know, it's like saying we'll raise your taxes by 1 cent, but we guarantee that goes into pay for X. And that's just not the way the kind of finance works. But I mean, actually, in this case, it kind of does work, because if you're cancelling a project, that money has been budgeted. It's kind of in the sisters take it pot. And I certainly think, to spend that sum of money on a road that really,
it's a road to nowhere.
Yeah,
a road to nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that makes empathy.
There's one last thing on the education front that I want to point out is in the post-secondary sphere. And this is a big one. Cover the tuition costs for those who need it. So presumably those who are of lesser means on the poverty scale, I believe. There'll be a fund. I'm just going through here to get to that point, but an effort will be made to cover those tuition costs, which is great. I mean, ideally, I think we should work towards making the first degree should be on the government. After that, if you want to get a master's or a second one, that can be on you. But stuff like that is what we need to be hearing. Oh, and there's also, and this will come back and bite them in the butt, but it's a good thing while we saw it. They're going to be hiring 1,000 mental health workers for students and staff in the education system, which we like to hear. That's a very good thing. This is also something that when we come in the latter half, we're going to be coming back to and say, this is not such a good thing. We'll explain later.
It's a good thing, but, and
there's a big but on it.
Part 2 of the,
there's a big but on this at the moment, I'm afraid. Right, for the time being,
part 2 to find out what that is.
In the actual school system, it's great. So when students might be diagnosed with some form of mental illness, there'll be workers in the system to actually work with them, which is a good thing. But stay tuned for the downside. So all in all, education is it's really clear that this is a huge priority for the Stephen Del Duca potential Liberal government. I like what I'm reading so far on it. I would very much like to see a lot of these policies implemented into the education system.
We couldn't do this at the previous point because all the platforms went out, and obviously the PCs still haven't issued a platform and probably won't. But what we can do now is kind of compare and contrast to an extent. So, I mean, the NDP has suggested, that they would simply convert the current loans-based education, further education system and higher education system to a grant space. And that has something to be said for it. I mean, that gets rid of the debt entirely. So we can compare that. I mean, now I'm trying to remember. I believe that I can't think back this far, but before 2018, that fees for post-secondary education were eliminated and cancelled by the Conservatives.
Of course.
I mean, I stand to be corrected on that, but I think there was a fairly major initiative that is now escaping my brain.
No, there was talk. I remember there was talk.
They're not bringing that back. Is what.
Yeah, there's talk
bringing
back
a smaller version back.
But there was talk back in the day. You're right, of eliminating I think it was for those on the low end of the poverty scale or on poverty, they would get free tuition. That, I believe that you're right, that was canceled by the Ford government because why not? But that's the education platform in a nutshell. There's a lot more in there that we didn't cover because this is only really a 45-minute podcast. So onwards and upwards. Environment.
Environment, again, I mean, we are able to compare and contrast. And my kind of initial disappointment replaced fairly quickly by a kind of feeling that, okay, well, obviously the Greens are going to be are going to promise the most. That this is why they exist, is expect no other party to go quite as far as they do on that thing. But the Liberals certainly go a hell of a lot further than the NDP on this. And for me, that boils down to, well, there's a few things. I mean, completely eliminating all carbon-based fuel from hydro generation. So they got rid of coal in 2000s. A commitment to get rid of gas. That's not nothing. I mean, it's now it would have been easier, but as we saw in recent weeks, the fact that Pickering is being retired, the Pickering nuclear power station is being retired, is actually meaning that we're going to be turning to gas power generation a lot more than we should be in the years ahead. And there's no talk in the platform about whether they're thinking of more nuclear power generation, but it's certainly something that needs to be.
They're going to have to do that, or definitely expand the solar and wind and tie that into some kind of massive battery capture and storage system. That is the kind of the Achilles heel, is those details, but they are making the commitment, and that's it'd be our job to hold them accountable to it.
Yeah, and they I mean, basically these numbers I'm going to say, I don't think anybody should have a platform that doesn't have these targets. And so they say, well, we're going to cut greenhouse gas by 50% below 2005 level 2030, and we'll be net zero in 2050. And I think the Greens will be net zero. I mean, obviously, very ambitious. Again, that's the Green Party that they're going to do.
The one thing that I think
do not mention those numbers. They are not in their platform, and I think that's completely unforgivable in this day and age.
Well,
you can talk about when we expect to be carbon neutral.
You point out though that offline that the NDP also were basically copying the former Liberal plan, the cap and trade program. The NDP want to bring back a cap and trade system, whereas the Liberals are talking about, they don't really mention it because I think they realize, there's a carbon pricing program already in effect now at the federal level. They'll probably just leave that in place. So they don't need to worry about starting something up around. They're just like, it's there. We're done with it. Now, where it takes, where I like seeing, and there's something that's common amongst the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals, is massive subsidies for you and I on purchasing an electric vehicle, which is important if we're going to actually start tackling our emissions, especially here in the 905. Switching from the internal combustion engine to an EV transit needs to be done quicker. Also, again, we've had Flavio Volpe on to talk about the APMA and manufacturing here in Ontario, especially here in the 905. All the auto parts jobs that exist here, we need to be able to buy these products. That's something that always boggled my mind with the Ford government saying we want to turn it into the electric vehicle manufacturing center of North America. Yet none of us, every other state in south of the border has some kind of, or there's a federal subsidy, or they make it cheap to buy an electric car. That doesn't exist here. We don't, all we have is $5,000 from the federal government. That's it. There's no subsidy right now on the books here in Ontario. I'm very emboldened by the fact that the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens all want to bring in some form of subsidy. I like that, and I hope that's good.
Well, I mean, yeah, it will be much as I think reducing car dependence ultimately. I can't have this conversation and not mention the ultimate objective of reducing the amount we depend on cars. Ultimately, at the same time, we're going to need cars in the foreseeable future, and they have to be electric. So let's get on that thing and get the prices to a point where they're competitive with gas engine cars. As soon as the next car I buy, I would like to be electric. If I was buying a car today, that would be difficult objective to actually meet. So yeah, here's hoping.
The other thing,
I mean, again, I felt on this front the LP do considerably better than the ND, which has been the kind of reputation in recent history. And I don't know why that is, why the ND would allow them to be kind of less radical on this subject than the Liberals. I don't see what they win.
You know what?
It's like, steal the Liberals' green credentials. I'm giving advice to parties, which I like to do from time to time. It's like steal the Liberals' credentials on this.
I don't know. I know. Maybe that's a different episode for a different time, or maybe we'll do that on election night. Yeah. The last E that we were looking at was this is a big one for me. The economy, and I'm really psyched by the fact that the Liberal platform seems to be the only platform that actively seems to address the fact that we are in a different economic world post-COVID. Their economic platform is essentially a lot of encouraging small businesses to kind of come out of the pandemic strong. There's talk of helping for 2 years small businesses that were by eliminating corporate taxes for them. They're talking about eliminating incorporation fees for new business startups, reducing regulatory burdens on small business, capping credit card fees, capping commission fees, all these things that they seem small, but they really do add up if you're a small business. Like there's a huge amount of red tape and fees that are corporate trying to start something up. I like the fact that you're going to try and encourage that more so because we all hear of the labor shortages that are happening. And a lot of it is people saying, I don't want to go back to my old horrible job. I want to work from home. I want to do a business from home, but to incorporate eliminating all those fees would go a great way to helping actual businesses get off the ground, which is great. The other thing that I am really jacked about is finally somebody talks about sick days for workers, providing 10 paid sick days for all workers and banning employer-required doctor's notes is a big thing, especially coming out of post-COVID. You and I have both I mentioned how when I got COVID, I was pretty much out for almost 2 weeks. With just symptoms or just not feeling well. It took me a good while to get back on my feet. 10 paid sick days would go a long way to saying, no, I can stay home, recuperate, get better, come back when I'm ready. And then they're going to reimburse businesses for this cost of up to $200 a day, which is a great thing. Another big push is the launch for the 4-day work week, which is fantastic. You know, who wouldn't want an extra Friday or a Monday off? Tuesday's the new Monday, I guess. I don't know.
And then they say it's a demonstration to show the potential. Yeah. And I guess it's not a matter of us all getting an extra day off and not doing the work. It's a matter of giving people the flexibility to work when they want to. Yeah. Which has always seemed crazy. It's like, no, you have to work between 9 to 5 on these 5 days. It's like, why? Why can't I work? I mean, as a self-employed person now, I know my work patterns are highly irregular. I wish they were more regular. So I'd like to know what a 6-day week is because it tends to be kind of 7. Yeah. But that's my own choice as my own inefficiencies, which make it so. You know, I have that flexibility, so I'm not complaining. And the
other thing I think is important, and I want to touch upon in the post-COVID world, is protecting gig workers. And I know when you hear that word gig workers, you're going to think of the skip the dishes drivers or the Uber drivers, and you're thinking of those people. But that's a lot more. There's a lot more to that than just those workers. If you look at the gig economy, you have if websites like Upwork or Fiverr, where if you're a professional looking to sell your services, such as graphic designer, podcast editing, script writing, all that stuff that you say, well, I can do that for you for a modest fee. That's a gig. You're going from gig to gig to protect work that, your right to be paid on time, to protect your pay schedules and your fees, as well as possible access to benefits. That would go a long way. And especially as we know for a fact that people are going more and more into this work field, I like the fact that they're talking about addressing it and trying to say, no, these are no longer side hustles. For a lot of people say, this is my job. I can go grab a contract for a month, grab a contract for 2 or 3 months, make some money, move on to the next one. I like that the Liberals are finally addressing this and saying, this is the new reality. Post-COVID, we need to take action on it.
Yeah, and I probably also somewhat in the gig work here, saying as a small business owner, and it depends what you define as a small business. There's sole proprietors and partnerships, and defined in different ways sometimes. Yeah. But I know that getting to the point where my business could afford to pay for health benefits was like a huge point because, damn, it's expensive.
It is.
But damn, you really need to have it.
Yeah, it is.
And finding a way to do that was true. So helping that's yeah, it's a small. You know what? And I'll be kind of frank that I skimmed right past that and didn't notice it. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, actually thinking about it's kind of a big deal.
It is. It's one of those things like we're kind of coming out of this. I'm emboldened to see it because it's one of the few platforms that really kind of acknowledge the fact that we're in a different world post COVID-19. We know we might be getting out of the masking debate and whatnot, but the fact that people are just saying, no, I'm done with the 9-to-5 rat race world. I'm taking back ownership. I like the fact that liberals are leaning into that and saying we're going to help you kind of we're going to make this into a normal, which is good. The other slight thing, Del Duca mentioned it on our interview, and it's worth noting again. They are talking about bringing back their UBI initiative, restarting that to see that. So that's also another thing that to help workers transition into that. So I've been talking for too long about the pluses. Let's take a break and we'll come back and then we'll find all the holes that we can drive Mack trucks and shipping crates through. And we're back. So while we talked about the good things that worked on this platform, there's a lot of not so good things. And Roland, why don't you outline that for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the entire section of this platform on housing development, I hate. I mean, actually, there's a couple of things in here which are but the bulk of it, frankly, could be a conservative PC platform if they ever bothered to write them. This is a pro-developer platform. This platform contains nothing to upset developers. Now, and it's also the one part of the platform where I felt there were, sentences that just aren't entirely honest. And that really annoys me. Other than this section, I didn't really come across it. I think I commented it when it was a B platform. It annoyed me how often they mentioned other parties, and also that some of the things they said about the other parties just weren't true. Such as the Liberals did nothing for transit was the one that just drove me nuts, because it's like, that's just a flat out lie. And here we got the Liberals, or the authors of this platform, saying, that Doug Ford has encouraged sprawl and weakened the things that encourage development in urban centres. That's not true. He's done nothing. All the rules that were there before are still there. He's just made them easier to build everywhere. So yeah, sprawl, but also downtown. I mean, everything he's done is what I really, disliked about this platform was a complete failure to, the weakening of municipal powers and actually suggestions of further powers that should be taken away from. This is ultimately about democracy. The way that the provincial parties view it is that municipal governments can't be trusted because they're small-minded and stupid. Well, fine. If you think that, just abolish the whole level of damn government and do it yourself and be honest. That's not what they do. They talk about partnering with municipal weasel words like will encourage municipalities to do X. A quote.
If I could just jump in there for a second. There's a note here that I've always found. I thought that you're right. This thing is very much about just build. And then when you want to go talk about local municipal governments, I find that they kind of gloss over it. There's no concrete things. And to give you an example, the Ontario. This is a quote from their campaign on our platform on page 14. The Ontario Liberals will empower municipalities to accelerate housing projects, make building homes a priority in growth planning legislation, work with municipalities to expand zoning options, help and reward municipalities that meet or exceed higher housing targets. I've never heard of a municipality that doesn't want more housing. It's the question of how do you get there? There's no talk of they're not talking about the core beef. We talked with John Taylor, mayor of Newmarket, last month. His beef was like, he said, they're not against development. It's development for Newmarket and by extension, all the various municipalities across the 905 and across the province. Each one says, well, we want to look our way. We want to make our city unique. Give us the power to just say, no, you can't build that here. We want X. And this document doesn't really go into that. It doesn't really, and the problem is right now the developers know how to game the system, right? I throw in a a condo tower that's far above your slated, your official plan's bare minimum. You say, nope, we don't approve it. Well, I'm taking it to the OLT. They take it to the OLT, and the OLT is so overwhelmed with various files from across the province. They pretty much say, yep, okay, we'll allow it. With maybe a few minor, you'd say, okay, you wanted a 25-story condo. Well, here's the compromise. It's not 20. Developer still gets more than what the zoning allowed. There's no talk about fixing that system. There's no talk about actually going into this and saying, how can we fix the system? Because right now, the developers cry wolf, but they know what they're doing. They know how to game the system to get what they want. And it just perpetually puts off building the homes that we need now down the road. It's just talking like empower municipalities to accelerate housing projects. How? How are you going to do that?
And I think I know what they mean when they say what they mean by empower municipalities is take power away from municipalities and make it even harder for municipalities to control what and where it happens. Now, they say local communities know best when it comes to where and how to build more homes. I'd love to believe that, but I don't. And when you're not even mentioning in any significant way the OLT, which was formerly the LPAT, formerly the OM, and the problems that causes, then you're not really dealing with anything, and you're not being honest. We'll update Ontario's growth planning framework to recognise that building homes for all and current future Ontarians is a fundamental obligation of local governments. Do you think local governments don't know that? I mean, basically, planning and housing is what local government does about 70% of the time. I mean,
that's why they
exist. Huge chunk of the problem is that all that work that they do, which is very expensively worked on by highly paid staff, is routinely then shredded by the OLT. And it's like duplication of work, apart from anything else, is off the chain. Everybody's been encouraging local government to do what it can to approve housing and allow housing. The issue is how we control what type of housing, where it is, and how we pay how we make sure that the right type of housing is being built, and not the developers will want to build a particular type of housing, which is cheap to build, easily approved, and doesn't really involve them in any ongoing responsibilities. And that's natural because that's obviously much profitable. The problem is the housing we need is rental. It has a big ongoing responsibility. Difficult to build because it's not in greenfield sites. The housing we need is the most problematic, and there's nothing here that's challenging any of that, other than I will say the kind of as of right building in single-family home neighbourhoods, which both the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals all have in one way or another. And that is a good thing. So I will give credit where it's due.
I just want to jump in to clear up. The platform does mention the Ontario Land Tribunal on page 16 of the platform. However, I find it's a little lackluster. We'll clear backlogs wherever they exist, including by investing an additional $15 million annually into the Ontario Land Tribunal and Landlord and Tenant Board, as well as properly equipping provincial ministries to effectively and efficiently review land use applications. Throwing money at this problem is not...
That's the most terrifying paragraph of the whole thing. I mean,
throwing money at this is not going to fix this problem. It's a structural...
taking what the Conservatives spent 4 years doing and saying, you see what Doug Ford just did for 4 years? Let's do that, but more. And we'll give him an extra $50 million to do some more of it. And what does a politician mean when they say properly equipping provincial ministries to effectively review land use applications? It means the province will decide what happens with a land use application. That's not local democracy. That's abolishing local democracy, and I hate it.
Here's what this is about. They want to do what the Tories did, and the free market will supply housing units to fill the demand. Here's the problem with that logic. The free market so far has done a piss poor job of handling that. The free market doesn't actually give us an option. The free market of just developers building units to sell to us is basically more sprawl, so more single-family housing, which might be too big for some families to use, or the option is 20-story condo towers with each unit being 1 or 2 bedrooms that doesn't really fit the need of families of various sizes, various needs. There's no middle to accommodate. That's where the free market is, right? You might have a family that says, well, I need a 3-bedroom apartment to rent, or I want a townhouse to rent, or I do need a fully detached home and I'm willing to spend the money for it. that free market doesn't exist, but this is assuming, the developers will build that. So far, they haven't. I don't see a reason why they would in the future.
Well, and the whole history of housing the world over. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The history of housing the world over is that the free market doesn't build affordable housing; it builds slums. No. And when it can't build slums, it builds the closest thing it can get to a slum.
Yeah, but here's the other problem with it is that we need, if you're going to expect the free market to bring down or plateau housing prices, which is really what this is about. This is about kind of curbing the housing market in this province. You need all those units on the market now. This doesn't make that happen. All this does is perpetuates the argumentative and combative nature that it currently exists in our housing development state, and just says we're going to keep doing it, except we're just going to try and push more onto the market. So basically, like what will happen is I'm city A. I say, here's my plan. It doesn't mean worth squat. Developer comes in and says, I want to build a 40-story condo tower. We say, no, that's over the zoning permit. I'm going to appeal it to the land tribunal. You put it to the land tribunal. Land tribunal says, okay, instead of 40 stories, we'll give you 30. Developer says, okay, I can work with that. You walk away, you build your tower, move on to the next one. All of which this is the process over years before shovels even get into the ground and foundations are laid and we actually get construction, years before the unit is actually put on the market for people to buy and sell and move into. This doesn't speed up anything. And
the process I've seen over a few years is just that, the speed of changes in regulation from provincial government comes at such a rate that all the documents that control planning at a local level are a constant state of appeal and revision. So they never get to a state where they're actually done. I mean, Burlington's been going through this official plan review thing for long before 2018. So go back to 2015 when that process started. It's now 2022. It's nowhere near ending. By the time it does end, it will have been effectively ripped up again by the provincial government 2 times over, at least. Yeah. It's a farce, and I get mad about it, not just the housing because things are done badly, but because we need good local government. We spend week after week, we bitch about local governments on this podcast and the stuff that's wrong with them. And I think part of the reason we get bad local government is because who the hell would want to do this job where you're, it's all responsibility and no power. Unless you're the kind of egotistical moron who actually likes having a capped off to them but having no actual influence over very much, why would you want to do that job? And now I was one of those morons 4 years ago, but I've learned the error of my ways. And in that situation, we're going to get bad people running for the job because, anybody who actually knows enough about local government doesn't want to do it because it sucks.
Here's the thing. We're coming up on the end of this podcast. What's your overall impression of this platform?
It's like the parson's nose, or was it not the parson's nose? Like the curate's egg. There's some really good stuff in here, and it's very much. I kind of feel like that's very much a Stephen Del Duca platform. That this is a man from Vaughan, which is the capital of development, Ontario. He's also a politician who grew up in the Greg Sobara Dalton McGuinty school of liberalism, which emphasized education. That was McGuinty's thing. I know people will be screaming about, well, that didn't end up so well. But for the first however many years of the McGuinty government, really it was like ending strife in education and actually pouring a lot of money into education. And so he's kind of following that plan, and great. Yeah, the development side of things, not good. We haven't mentioned that, the mental health side of things. We need to come back to that. This was incredibly disappointing on the mental health side. There are things in here which are good, but compared to both the Greens and NDP, the NDP promising basically to make mental health a full part of OHIP. That's just a phrase. What does it actually mean?
This is the but that we had earlier on in the episode, folks. That
it's a really big but.
But it is. But it's. I find it's telling that they say, okay, we're going to go and look after you in education, right? So if you're a high school student, you get diagnosed with some form of mental illness, and there's somebody there for you. The problem is, okay, you turn 18 and you're out the system. What do you do? There's no transition. It's literally like you're out. Good luck to you. Good luck finding a mental health professional to treat you as an adult. If you still need treatment, if it's kind of a tease, and it leads to long ongoing problems of people literally crashing on, without being medicated, without proper supervision or proper treatment, or just being left to their own devices. It's honestly kind of inhumane and cruel to do that to people who might need long-term treatment for various mental health issues. It's not fair. That being said, maybe there's a part 2 coming somewhere down the road. I don't know, but you're right. That
I think if contrary to all the evidence we're getting right now, Miss Del Duca won a majority to form a government. It'd be a very recognisable form of government, and in some ways, this platform read to me as the most government ready, almost. I mean, perhaps because it's written by people who've actually been in government, and you may see that as a bad thing or whatever. That's just how, my. I hope my biases are not playing a role there, but maybe they are. I mean, I felt the NDP platform gaps are in a party that constantly says we're different, to then have a platform that constantly bashes the other parties and says things that aren't honest about those parties. It's like, you really you undermine yourself, and then you don't even have a target for when we're going to be carbon neutral. Yeah. Come on, it's just not acceptable.
The one thing I was telling you about this was I thought it was a platform that tries to tie into it, but then doesn't quite carry it through, or it just seems a platform of mixed priorities. For example, I know we just poo-pooed on the development portion of this, but there was one part where they were talking about basically allowing landlords of commercial zones area to be able to fund to transition that from commercial zone into residential units, possibly. And they had a whole mechanism, which was good. That's something we've been talking about for a while, and credit to where credit's due. However, the dollar transit on Go and Northland Transit, I find weird because a lot of people are working from home now, and we're going to spend money on the dollar transit on Go service for the few that are still doing it. I just thought what's the priority here? Why wouldn't you focus the priority on we're going to empower your employer to let you work from home if you want to? And I don't get they haven't really been focusing on that angle. It's been hey, we're going to give $1. We're going to help your boss take you back into the workplace that you've been happily out of for the last 2 years.
And it's. I mean, I know Karen was saying today, in the kind of poll of what people care about, COVID is one of the things they care least about, the kind of post-COVID world, where we feel that's very important. The electorate apparently does. But it does seem to me that, as well as all the bad things that came out of COVID, there were some good things, and the working from home thing, the biggest good thing of all. Yeah. The fact that no government's kind of seized on that. Yeah, let's say that, you have a right to work from home unless there's a good reason not to. Maybe not 5 days a week, but maybe 2 or 3 days a week. Because, what a huge contribution to cutting down on gas emissions that would, and to not even mention it, just the lack of vision. Maybe you invest that same money could have been invested something along those lines rather than the transit. Even in the housing bit, there are good things. I mean, I think the idea of having a housing corporation that basically works with cities to sort of encourage and target housing, that could be a really good thing. It kind of doesn't really excite me on a gut level, but it might be one of those things that in practice is really important, but I just don't really properly debate that.
You know what? Okay, but we're coming up on the 45 minutes here, so I think why don't we leave it at that for now? But that's pretty much, unless the Conservatives come up with a platform in the next few weeks, that's pretty much going to be our platform coverage for this election.
Yeah, I want to cover the PCs. I want to give them their 3 good things as well as their 3 bad things. I'm not sure that we hit 3 in every case with every party, but we were there or thereabouts. Some good things counted as 2.
You know what? I'm going to leave it at that, and let's let our I want our listeners, if you have things that you like or like in the platforms, let us know. And there's things that you thought we missed, let us know as well. Glad to give it them a second gander. But until then, this is Joel McLeod signing off.
Bye-bye.
That's that's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.